Thank you. We'd like to share with you what happened last year when we went down to Tijuana and built our first home. Slides will help us share some of those beautiful experiences from last year's trip. Last year, a group of California UU congregations responded to a call from the UU Justice Ministry of California, which was partnering with Casas de Luz, or Houses of Light, to build a small home in Tijuana. This meant two things for the congregations. One, to raise money for the cost of the materials and trip expenses, and two, to gather enough people to help build the house. We were told by Casas de Luz director Kathy Fowler that we would be working alongside the family that would move into the house when we finished. A word about Kathy Fowler. She herself is a UU and a master carpenter, and she started Casas de Luz in 2005. In the ensuing years, she has organized the building of over 150 homes with many different volunteer groups. Even though Casas de Luz got its start with UU Fellowship of San Dieguito, California, it became its own entity soon after. Last year was the first time in many years that a UU group had actually gone to Tijuana to build a house. But first, we had to raise a fair amount of money, about $10,000. We put the word out, and UUs and friends gave generously. In addition, we had a fundraising bake sale here at UUSLO, and more people donated generously to support our project. So a small group of us, well, actually two of us in the end, Jan and myself, from this congregation, journeyed to Thousand Oaks, picking up Reverend Betty Stapleford, and then others along the way. We met in San Diego, where a few more UUs and friends had gathered and headed for the border. We arrived at the orphanage where we would be staying for 3 nights. The first night, we looked out and saw the beautiful city lights, and in the distance, the bright lights of San Diego. And slide 7 is here. Tijuana is a metropolis of 2 million people. There is a growing middle class here, but also you can see the harsh reality of poverty everywhere. It is common to see homes like these, made with pallets and any other scraps of materials available, with dirt floors, no electricity, and no plumbing. As we arrived at the building site each day, we were welcomed by a very friendly horse. On the first day, there was already a group of master carpenters busy at work when we arrived. Since we UUs were a small group, a number of additional master carpenters in Mexico volunteered their time to help. And since we were not skilled carpenters, we were quickly put to work at jobs we could do, such as pounding nails and painting the walls to the house. And because Lorena Munoz, the widowed mother of 4 children, for whom the house was being built, specifically requested a pink house, we painted her house pink. And then the walls went up quickly. For there, and the next slide, and here the trusses went up, and then the roof went on. And so, with so many workers, we moved forward in leaps and bounds. And before I step away from the podium, I'd like to tell how I happened to be here in Tijuana building a house. I had to work hard to convince myself to do this. When millions of people are living in poverty, it doesn't feel like much to build just one little house. But when we finally started building alongside the family that would be living there, it became much more real, and it became important. The family jumped in with such eagerness and pride, and you could also see their amazement when all of us strangers showed up and jumped in too. Carlos, the tall 17-year-old son, whom you'll see pictures of a little later, said to one of us, "Es que no puedo creerlo." I can't believe this is happening. Having their own first home, what a huge life-changing step for this one family. And that's why I know it's worth it to go back and do it again.
In my family, there is sorrow. In my town, there is panic. In the nation, there is wailing the whole world round.
Go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly, and may the elders be more wise, and may the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me your desert to hold my fears. Give me an ocean to hold my wonder, and give me a desert to hold my tears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change.
my favorite Holly Near song. Thank you, choir, for singing it so beautifully. It was beautiful. Kathy Fowler put me in charge of the outdoor paint crew. Here you see Reverend Betty and Diana Kubelos from UU Ventura. Looks like I'm supervising, but really I am painting. It's a long plank. This was toward the end of our first day of the 2 days. Amazing how much we accomplished. It helped to have a wonderful home-cooked lunch delivered to us both days. These are the best tamales I've ever had. Of course, we took a nice break to sit together and get acquainted. And it looks like me up there on the roof, although it's not really a very good picture, but some people thought that. But no, that's Sua, one of the Tijuana master carpenters. Here's Douglas holding the already made window, and Mark Chase from the Mount Diablo UU Church in Walnut Creek. Mark currently chairs the UU Justice Ministry Immigrant Justice Action Team, and he's the organizer for this year's pilgrimage. He hopes to get 6 from his congregation to join us. Putting the final touches on the roof, here you can see some of the beauty that is Tijuana in the spring. Once we got the frames all painted, we set to sawing them for trimming the house, something Casas de Luz has trademarked, their own trim. So you see houses around and you'll know if it's a Casas de Luz house because it looks similar to this. So Douglas is here sawing, and Mark, they learned a lot. We all did. Here's Antoinette Scully and her fiance Jolly painting one of the bedrooms. You might remember Antoinette if you came last year to the Pacific Southwest Assembly held here at UUSLO. She led a workshop, and she is on the UU Women's Federation staff. She was to have joined us this morning to read the children's story, but she was called away by her grandfather's death. But we're happy the 2 of them plan to join us again on this year's trip. They're from First Unitarian Church of Los Angeles. Here are most of the Munoz family: Esperanza, Carlos, Lorena, and Alexa. Missing are Nigela and her baby. Carlos, who has ambitions to become an attorney, and Jolly are shown here putting together a bunk bed for the teenage girls. This really became a home when we were all finished, furnished with toys for the baby, couches, chairs, bedspreads, and curtains. It wasn't just a house, it was a home. And here's our friend Johnny Rodriguez helping to finish the bunk bed. Johnny was deported in 2011, and he and his U.S. citizen wife, Eileen, a retired nurse, now make their thriving lives in Tijuana. They often volunteer in local orphanages. Johnny is a special friend who's always been part of our UU Justice Ministry border trips, going back to 2013. Yes, he plans to be with us again this year, and he also plans to help with transportation. Here we are welcoming the Munoz family into their new home. Kathy is giving them the key as part of the ritual ceremony. You can see Nigela and her baby here, and Flaco, the head carpenter. Nigela's husband was working, but he will also live here. And here is our whole crew, including a couple of Casas de Luz volunteers who came down from San Diego for the day. So we did something together, and it was good. We look forward to a similar experience in only 5 weeks. As you can see, the home has expanded. An addition was added. We had already paid for it, and I mean we, which includes many of you. Johnny took this picture a month after we were there and shared it with us. And here we are in the orphanage having breakfast. What a great home away from home. The church who owns this orphanage reserves the 5th floor for guests who come to Tijuana to help build homes. In addition to comfortable sleeping arrangements, a kitchen, and a room for reflections, we got to engage with children at certain times of the day. wonderful. All right. Thank you.
Now please join me in a time of prayer and meditation. Imagine for a moment that you had been a part of our trip last year. You've seen the slides. Can you see yourself in those slides? What learnings would you have had? What changes might you have noticed in yourself and others? Have you begun to see yourself and feeling a growing sense of the community with the group that went? What spiritual awakenings might you have gained through your work and accomplishments together? I invite you to spend a moment thinking about how you would feel if you had been there, and feeling the growing sense of community in the group that were there last year. Namaste and amen. I was honored to be the chaplain for this trip, to bring to this not just my work, untalented though it may have been, but in fact to see this trip and our work together through a spiritual lens. So in this slide, you see us, we gathered each night talking about the spiritual implications of what we had done that day. On our arrival, before we had had work, we talked about our hopes for what the trip would bring to us, not knowing what it would really be about for us. We joined each night, that night and every other, by lighting our chalice, listening to some words, singing, feeling a sense of sharing in that group, many of whom we had never met before. We shared our hopes, our experiences, our learnings, and finally the things we wanted to bring back with us, the memories that we shared, the actions that we had taken, and putting our beliefs into action for justice, equity, and compassion. Next slide, please. This was a view that we saw a lot. Not just one wall, but a second wall, just to be sure everything was completely secure. And it was really hard to avoid thinking about the ways that these walls throughout the territory that we were covering would be dividing people from each other, from themselves, and from their world. A lasting memory in my mind, and certainly I think in the minds of many of us who were on the trip. Next slide. This is Friendship Park. Interesting it should be named Friendship Park, since now very few people can come there from this country, and the people from Mexico cannot leave to be friends with people on the other side. And you see there are murals. Doesn't make them any more beautiful, but it reminds us that this is in fact a human construction. And I remembered when I was there this time, a butterfly that I worked on with several other people. A butterfly standing for hope and possibilities. And you can see, actually you can't see it very well in this slide, but there is another wall on the other side. So that one blocks, there's a kind of a no man's land in between where no one can go. It used to be when these walls were first built, and you can see that they're at a slant, that they allowed people to come to the walls and actually they could speak to people through those little narrow slits, or even maybe touch fingers, say some words of love and caring concern. Now they can't do that anymore. I remembered on a time that I went, been on several trips, not to build, but just to go and see some of the things going on in Tijuana, when a man actually climbed up to the top of that wall, and we were all really frightened for him. Number one, that he would fall from the top of the wall, or number two, that some gun-happy Border Patrol person would shoot him as he got to the top. Fortunately, that didn't happen. He did come down. Next slide, please. And this is the wall a little farther down with names of deported veterans who never received the benefit of their service. The only thing that they got was, in fact, the right to be buried in the United States. Can you imagine? You served the country that you were living in and then were deported and received nothing for all of that effort that you made. Standing next to the wall, you see Jan and Javier, who are talking about their friendship that grew from a previous trip. He is working, you see, he has a shovel in his hand. He's working on trying to replant a garden that was destroyed by the Border Patrol for no particular reason, except they could. There is a native garden that's being planted by one of the people who lives there. And we were able to see, here's new growth, possibilities, hope. And yet the reality of this wall, the ocean in the distance, the gray clouds, and a feeling of despair. I can't lie. It didn't feel terribly hopeful that day as we were standing there. The wall goes into the ocean. Next slide, please. So people can't even, well, people have tried, but they didn't succeed in going out into the water and trying to get to the other side of the wall. This was Friendship Park that was established in 1971. And I didn't see it at the time, but I understand that, excuse me, Pat Nixon went down and they had, the wall then was just kind of a metal fence. And she evidently reached her hand across from one side to the other, something that you obviously can't do there now. And she was celebrating the first phase of this park that was envisioned as an international friendship park where people could gather to show their caring concern for each other. And she declared, "I hope there won't be a fence too long here." Obviously, she had no idea of what would happen later. The wall then was just a single wire fence to mark the border between Mexico and the United States. And then later it became an 18-foot wall. And then they found the need to build a second 18-foot wall just to be sure it was secure. Later, now, it is a 30-foot wall. And that also has been duplicated by a second wall just to be sure no one can get over. What does friendship mean when it's blocked between two 30-foot walls? Next slide, please. This is a part of our group that was gathering, and I have no idea what I was saying to them. I'm sure it was very profound. But you see there Douglas, Diana, and Mark and Antoinette. And you notice some of their hearts. I don't know whether you can see one here. I think there's one in the background. Hearts that people have decorated. So the idea of the heart has been a hope that people will find a better life. And these are installations. You'll see another one up closer in a minute. But I found it hard to find hope. I'm sorry, this is a kind of a downer. When you look and see what's going on there now, the fact that we would like to feel the love, and yet what we're feeling is just, well, I'm not even sure. I don't want to put into words for you. But the fact that this wall has been built, the fact that Friendship Park is celebrating not friendship, but separation. Next slide, please. Here, few of our people are sharing a smile. You've met these people in the slides before. It's Antoinette and Jan and Jolly. You see the backdrop. They have support with Mark, and Douglas is over there, over on the far side. You can see him. Next slide, please. And there is Douglas digging a hole. You can see, if you look carefully, there's a black pot in front of where he's standing, and you can see that there's a plant that he's going to put it into the hole. And unfortunately, later than that, the garden was again destroyed. But we're still, even though it has been destroyed again, we still would like to be fighting for growth, newness, opportunity. Next slide, please. Every Sunday at the border, they had border church. And there were 30 or 40 people, those people that gather each Sunday to find hope for themselves, to find hope for their country, to gather and share community with each other, where Pastor Seth, who is there speaking, I'm sitting on the side. I had some scripture to read and a prayer to give. And then a Latino minister who's not pictured there, Guillermo, each Sunday reading scripture, singing, praying, gaining strength. But we are sitting, as you can see, in the shadow of the wall that was there when we were there last year, not yet 30 feet. The service each Sunday is there in Friendship Park. It also is broadcast on Zoom from the American side. Actually, the American site where they were is too muddy for people to get in now. But you can see this service on Zoom, just as you can see this service on Zoom if you're at home today. Next slide, please. Here we see tearing down the wall. Yay! But it's the wrong wall, because they're just tearing this one down so they can build the bigger one. They're building a bigger, taller, stronger wall behind the first one, dividing neighbors again. With the first walls, at least people could see each other. No longer possible. Next slide, please. This is a close-up of one of the hearts, and you can see that it has an American eagle on one side, and what I understand is a Mexican eagle on the other side. And they are sharing an olive branch of peace. So the artist was obviously trying to show that peace was possible, that friendship was possible, and that they are sharing the olive branch of peace. And yet I can't quite get over the feeling that the American eagle, whose beak is very visible there, is dominating the Mexican eagle. But I have hope even in the midst of this despair, and I will continue to work with others to promote the inherent worth and dignity of all beings, as we say in our principles, in all the ways that we can. And I hope that you will too. Thank you.
Each time I visit Tijuana, part of my heart remains there. I've made many friends and have had memorable times, especially at Friendship Park. I've witnessed so many people trying to get to the U.S. I see the continued militarization of the border and criminalization of immigrants, and I know that instead we need humane and comprehensive immigration laws that just never seem to get passed. I look forward to this next pilgrimage, April 4 through 7, when we once again help a family build their home. We realize this is a big ask, but we hope some of you might be interested in joining us. It's one reason we're doing this service. Please talk with Reverend Betty, Douglas, or me after the service. We're all going again because it meant so much to us. Also, visit the UU Justice Ministry website for more details, including an orientation video. That's uujmca.org. Reverend Marcus Liefert from Berkeley UU will be our chaplain this year. His wife and child will also be part of the build. We hope to get 25 folks this year, and we're asking to have registrations done by March 15th. Please help us recruit by letting other UUs or like-minded folks know about it. You'll see some flyers in the social hall after the service. If you can't go but want to help, please donate again. On our home build tile on the UUSLO's website, on the giving page, at the UUJM website directly, or come to the bake sale next week, March 3rd, after the service. Let Gina or one of us know today if you'd like to donate a baked good. Last year, our bake sale generated $1,300, and we gave $3,000 total toward the effort. Let's do even better this year. Again, most of the money we raise helps go toward the building materials for the home. We supply all of that. Today's service is being recorded in case you want to see it again or share it, and we will be traveling to UU Santa Paula to do this same service with a couple of corrections on March 24th. Thank you again for your solidarity and for your generosity. Our closing hymn is We'll Build a Land, number 121 in the